Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. I am John Ledyard from pewterreport.com. With me today on the show to break down all things Bucs, to look ahead into the future with our, what are they called? Like they're the glass movies. What are they called? Looking glasses? I don't know what they're. Anyway, we're our crystal ball. That's what it is. Our crystal ball to see which Bucs players are going to be most productive this season is WDAE Zach Blobner. Zach, I am pumped to have you on the show. We've been boys for a while, but somehow you haven't been on the show with me, I don't think, until now.
It's because you've been using your looking glasses when you should have been using your crystal ball. That's been the problem, bro.
Did I really say looking glass? I had no idea what I was searching for there. I was completely lost. I knew what I was picturing. I was picturing like a Lord of the Rings, Saruman standing in front of, that type of moment.
That's not even looking glass. You're
coming up with it's the crystal ball. He was looking at the crystal ball and whatever and telling the future of Middle Earth. That's what I was thinking of.
I'm always down for a Lord of the Rings reference. We got the Fellowship of the Bucs reporters going right now, so I'm all about it.
Oh, I like it. That's pretty good. All right, I see what you're doing. Coming on the show, dealing heat right away. I enjoy it. Zach Blobner, ladies and gentlemen, WDAE's finest, and representing. And we're pumped about the part. We were just talking before we went on air. Got that partnership locked in. Pewter Report WDAE for this season, so you'll hear Pewter Report people a lot on WDAE. This year, which is going to be fun, even more than usual, I think. And then you'll hear people from 620 WDAE on the Pewter Report podcast as well a couple times a month. So it's going to be the best of both worlds, and it's going to be a fun Bucs season to have it that way.
Yeah, no doubt. I know at least for the Ronnie and T-Crash show, we've got Scott Reynolds every Monday. We've got you in your usual spot every Wednesday with us. And then Matt Matera is going to get into the rotation a little bit this year. He's going to be joining us on Friday. And I think Scott and Matt flip with the afternoon show, Ian and Jay, Monday and Friday. So when Scott's on with us, Matt will be on with them, vice versa. And then we're very selfish about you on Wednesdays. We don't let you flip with anybody. We're like, Ledyard's ours. Stay away.
Right. Just Wednesday. That's right. Yeah, no, I'm excited about it. It's been a lot of fun, and it'll continue to be a lot of fun, largely because this Bucs team, there's just so much to talk about, Zach. It's hard to run out of storylines right now because you turn your head and you're like, oh, man, we haven't talked about this super talented player in a couple of weeks because there's just a lot of them to talk about. It's that kind of an off season. We've had a blast with it. I know y'all have had a blast with it as well. And now here we are, 14 days from now, the Bucs will be ready to kick it off at home at Raymond James Stadium against the Dallas Cowboys to open up the entire 2021 season. It will be a day that Bucs fans remember for a long time, hopefully for the way, not just the way it starts, but also the way that the game ends at the end of that night with a victory, you would hope. But we've got a lot to talk about before we get to that point. Before we jump into our topics for today, which are going to revolve a lot around looking into the future, something that you and I we have mixed results at, I guess. We are going to talk about our friends over at Celsius. If you don't know, get the sparkling Fuji apple pear is moving up my rankings. This is one I don't talk about enough. So good, dude. Celsius, Live Fit. It's healthy energy. It accelerates metabolism. It burns body fat. There's no sugar in these things. There's a ton of different flavors. The flavors are amazing. Look at people in the chat. If you don't believe me, they'll drop their favorite flavors for y'all because they know that Celsius is where it's at. It has changed the game for a lot of people. We had our boy Mark Fisher send us an email today, one of our faithful listeners, and he said, hey, I'm telling you, I've told my class about it. Now we've got everybody drinking Celsius in the classroom, and we love it. I mean, that's what we want to be about. I know that's what Celsius wants to be about as well. So get the energy without a drop-off at Celsius.com. Go and use the store locator to figure out where you can get Celsius near you. Or click the banner ads over at pewterreport.com, and you can also get some Celsius that way. The other great way is to go to Amazon, do the subscribe and save option. That's what Scott just did, and you're getting a subscription you're saving every time, and it's coming regularly to you. So as soon as you run out of it, boom, you've got more at your door. That's the way to do it with Celsius.com. All right, Zach, you and I have had this kind of fun debate. It's waded into Twitter a little bit. It's barely, though. Most of it's been you and I behind the scenes trading barbs, talking and joking around about who actually is the Bucs' best wide receiver right now. The fan base is also up in arms about this. I think you'll find dissension in the chat as I even say this. Fans, everybody listen and watch and feel free to throw in who you believe the best Bucs receiver is this season. But I want to first clarify, Zach, that in some cases, maybe not for you, the best Bucs receiver may not be the most productive Bucs receiver in 2021. Even if we disagree about where both of those categories, we can agree that they won't necessarily be the same person, right?
Yeah, I like to think of it as we're like the Bucs parents, and we love all of our receiver children, but we have favorites, right? We have our favorite child, we have our favorite receiver, and I mean, the one thing we will agree on is that that room is just stacked from top to bottom. Whether you're talking about the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, even the 7, 8. Honestly, like it's just a great receiving room, and Bucs fans are just so fortunate, and as is the coaching staff, to be able to be arguing about which wide receiver 1 out of the top 3 guys is the best wide receiver.
That's right. Toby says Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin are the best wide receiver. Stank thinks Scotty Miller's wide receiver 1 still, so he's still on that train. He might be the only vote for it's Scotty Miller. He might be the only vote for Scotty.
I don't even think Scotty's voting for Scotty these days.
I did not expect AB to be leading the votes in this chat. I thought Mike Evans would lead it by far. We've got a lot of AB responses so far. But yeah, no, it is. You're right. It is definitely that situation, right? Like we can't even do the one-to-one comparison thing that much. Like these guys are different. They have different skill sets. If you wanted a certain route run or something done on a play, you might ask a different one to do it because there might be areas in which all 3 are kind of better. One's better than the other in all those areas. So there's a lot to unpack when we talk about who the best one will be. You still are very partial to Mike Evans and his impact on the field as someone who's watched Evans' career here kind of unfold and seeing how he's even gotten better in certain years, even as he got further down in his career, started off extremely productive, but that really hasn't fallen off at all. Some guys will start hot like that, and then it will fall off. The consistency with which he's been able to play at is pretty remarkable at this point in his career, Zach.
Yeah, no doubt. And regardless of who's throwing him the ball, he always finds a way to make an impact. We talk about how loaded not just the receiving room is, but this offense is in general with all the different weapons from running backs to tight ends to that receiving room. And then you got to think about the fact that Mike Evans still somehow got over 100 targets last year, right? Like he was still just getting looked at left and right from Brady, and he led the team in pretty much every catching category. Ironically, he was behind some of these other guys, whether you're talking about Godwin or AB or even Scotty Miller in his catch percentage. So he didn't catch the ball as often, but he still led the team in all those stats. So I can only try to imagine what his stat line would have looked like if he actually held on to the ball a little bit more. The one thing I'll always say, John, and we talk about the analytics a lot and the things that go behind the scenes. One thing that you can't argue with is the height, is the size. And Mike Evans is a guy that he's just bluntly bigger than a Chris Godwin or an Antonio Brown. So, if you're in a tight situation and you've got elite coverage, he can go up and beat that elite coverage regardless, just because he's bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the one thing that's made him the red zone has just been a place where he's been deadly. Sometimes it isn't about as much as of contested catches in the red zone as it is just the space is condensed. So when you have a guy that creates the space with his size, right? Like he's literally creating space, like to get to balls that other guys can't. Sometimes just being able to throw into those condensed spaces with a guy with his kind of wingspan is just a huge advantage, just physically, the way he's built. It makes a huge difference. I'll still say being able to create separation is the number one key in any area of the field, especially the red zone. And Evans' ability to do that too, I think, is really undersold. To me, he is such a better route runner than people give him credit for. Everybody acts like he is this big contested catch receiver. And I just really disagree with that narrative. Not that he isn't big or isn't a contested catch receiver. He can do those things, certainly. But to me, Evans is at his best because he creates space at his size. Like that's what makes him unique. We've seen lots of big guys, contested catch guys come and go. And, how many of those guys have there been over the course of the league, and their production will really just kind of go up and down, up and down. To me, the reason Evans is so consistent is that he's always open. He doesn't get enough credit for being open all the time. People act like he's not really that athletic or able to break routes off. And no, like he is. And that's what makes him different than other big, long receivers that mostly win vertically, is that he can actually create space and separation with his route running and his speed. That's not like a lot of these other big guys who are just going out and winning jump balls every week.
Well, plus we love to focus on which, cornerback one, quote unquote, from the opposing team is shadowing which receiver, right? Like the opposing defenses and defensive coordinators, they scheme it so that Mike Evans is constantly getting that blanket coverage or constantly getting, their best guy in the secondary to shadow him and watch him, assuming you have a cornerback that's comfortable going side to side and doesn't just pick one side of the field and say, I'm not moving from here. So I think that the respect that you see from his opponents is also what kind of shows you just how good he's been. And not to say that, like, again, certain other receivers aren't better at other things, but I think Mike's just the total package. And then when you do get him on paper and you're comparing, the size is just something that you can't compare. I'll continue to go back to that.
Yeah, it does make a big difference. And I also think that I'm going to get to the size in a second, actually, because it's kind of a point of contention with Chris Godwin's game, but also not really. But I want to come back to that because Evans' production has taken place so heavily in the vertical planes of the field. That is one thing that makes his 7 straight 1,000-yard seasons mind-boggling to me because he does not get manufactured touches. Like,
no,
even the best receivers in the league get some touches that are just like kind of like easy touches. What can you do with the ball in your hands? Mike Evans, and this is a negative for him, but a positive when you look overall at what he's been able to do in his career. He has never been a get the ball in his hands, create offense, create yardage with the ball in your hands type of guy. That's a negative part of his game skill set that needs to be compared to other people maybe. But the fact that he's been able to be as productive like he has for 7 straight years without any easy touches, without anything, like he has to get open all the time. He has to get open in the hardest, lowest degree of difficulty plane of the field and still be productive at a level that we've never seen anybody be productive at. That is bonkers to me. Like, I don't think people realize how hard it is to do what Evans has done in terms of he may not be the most well-rounded. He's certainly not the most well-rounded receiver on the Bucs. But when you talk about what he's been able to do, and I know he gets a lot of volume, and that's part of it, but what he's been
there's
able
a reason
to do,
he gets that volume though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of it. And the other thing too, like just from more of a less serious pivot point of the whole conversation, John, and you've watched enough of his tape. I don't know if anybody's better at drawing pass interference or I should say using pass interference to his advantage, whether he's drawing it or pushing off. And listen, Bucs fans for a long time now have watched this guy. And there are games where it gets frustrating, especially early in his career, where you're like, Mike, why are you pushing off these little guys that like can't compete with you anyways? But it's something that like he's really mastered, I think, more than a lot of the elite receivers. Now, the frustrating part, I guess you could argue, is that he doesn't need to use it, but it is another tool that he keeps in his bag. And more often than not, he gets that call, especially now that he's got Brady throwing it to him.
It's amazing. If Mike Evans had been on national TV more in his career before this season, more people would be on board wow, Mike Evans is a little bit of a theatrical, I wouldn't say flopper because he's not a flopper, but if you grab him, he will set, like, he knows how to make it look great like he does. And that's an art, and that's what you have to do. You know, AB, that's funny that this even comes up now that I'm thinking about it. I've never thought about it before. AB has always been terrible at like selling a call. Like he never sells a call. Like he just doesn't sell calls. Like, not that he's ever needed to, obviously he's a monster, everything else,
right?
But he's never really sold it. Like there's been times where I'm like, come on, he's taking liberties with you. Like he has to do illegal stuff to stop you, but he never does anything. Like he never says anything. He never makes a big deal out of it. He never falls down or stumbles so part of it's strength and balance. He's always been elite at that, but Evans just like, he is so theatrical on the field, like his body language and everything. He knows how to get, 5 or 6 penalties in the Super Bowl. That changed the entire game. And a lot of, they were legit penalties, most of them, but he makes sure officials see him. Like if you grab him, he's going to make sure you're not going to get rewarded for breaking the rules on him. And so, yeah, that is a big part of his game. It's interesting. Josh brings up a great point here. Godwin's versatility takes it for me. And that's where I say the discussion takes on levels, because you and I have gone back and forth on this. You think Mike Evans is the best receiver on the Bucs team. While I see your point, certainly, because I've just gone on and on about how Evans is amazing, I give Godwin an edge just because I think there's more value in the fact that he can do more things. Like I think he can do what Evans can do before, or easier than Evans could do what Godwin could do. But then you get into the value of who does what one does more valuable than the other. And the one thing I can't prove about Chris Godwin is the ability to meet number 1 corners. I can't prove that because he doesn't face them.
And I love Chris Godwin. I do.
Oh,
I do. I'm a big fan. But I don't know how you could watch. And I know there's a lot of injuries and there's a lot of other things. And not that he still didn't have big catches in some really good games. I don't know how you couldn't look at his season last year, though, and say that, I mean, he took a step back. He did. And there's definitely a lot more question marks heading into this season than we ever thought there would be. Not that there's a ton, but there's more than we thought there would be surrounding a guy in Chris Godwin, who honestly has to have a bounce back year. Now everything is working in his favor to do so, but he had a bad issue with drops late last season. And again, it wasn't like he couldn't catch. I wouldn't call it the yips because he was still finding a way to make some, big time clutch catches in the playoffs. But he, for the most part, I thought had a drop issue. He was getting, all of his injuries were different. He had like 3 or 4 different injuries last year, which, I won't knock a guy for. Mike's been banged up before too for certain seasons, still finds a way to get to 1K, but that's a separate conversation. For me with Chris Godwin, the big thing out of 2 seasons ago, which was his monster year where he came onto the map, everybody was like, he's a top 10 receiver. Oh my God, Tampa's got 2 of them with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Well, the big thing was, can he do it 2 years in a row? And bluntly put, he didn't do it. And there's a lot of factors in that, but because he didn't do it 2 years in a row, I just don't have enough faith built up through his career yet to say that Chris Godwin is just this monster of a man, at least the guy that's going to take over the wide receiver 1 spot or the best receiver on the team role over Mike Evans yet.
Well, first of all, you disrespected him a little bit, so I just want to make that. I just want to make that just a little bit. I mean, come on,
just a little bit.
But hey, listen. First, Josh, we appreciate the $5 super chat, man. It means a lot. You're always contributed, and we definitely appreciate that and recognize that. Josh Q is the man. But come on, like Chris Godwin was unbelievably productive for the fact that he missed like over 4 games of actual playing time this season, and like. I know that the injuries have to maybe be taken into account because he's missed some time too. Evans has too, and I give him credit for that. Like I said, Godwin's role is a little bit different in this offense, so he might never be the yards per catch guy. But Godwin had 5 drops in 1 game against Washington, the only game in his career that's looked anything even remotely close to that. And he still had less drops on the season than Mike Evans had. So it's still like kind of okay, there's a give and take here, like where I do recognize that Godwin, if he had caught those balls against Washington, we might not be having the same conversation because of how psychology works for people. Like if he had caught those balls in that game and put up 200 yards, which he was capable in that game, and probably caught the touchdown before the half against the Saints, no doubt. I don't know if you want to call it yips or whatever. No doubt. He disappointed over those 6 quarters. No question. Came back, obviously played great against Green Bay. It was a big reason why they won. And you could go on and on about the game-to-game comparison. I think Godwin's an elite receiver in the NFL. I think he's a top 10 receiver in the NFL. I understand the argument for Mike Evans for sure. But to me, the biggest thing with Godwin, you are getting a better yards after catch guy than Mike Evans. I think that is big. That is a big part of receiving that goes unnoticed to me too often, is that when a guy gets the ball in his hands, he is maximizing every opportunity he has with the ball in his hands. Godwin a year ago was the best receiver in the league in terms of when he had the 1,300-yard season. He was the best receiver in the league with the ball in his hands after the catch. Picked up the more yards per catch after the catch than any other receiver in the league. Crazy numbers. He was good and productive in that way last year. I think as the offense comes back to kind of a comprehensive, cohesive group, where everybody is on the same page more often, that will be the case again more often for him, and he'll get more touches like that. The other thing about Chris Godwin that to me is he is better at than Mike Evans, period. He is a better contested catch receiver than Mike Evans.
How can you say that?
The numbers back it up too.
How can you say that?
The tape shows it too, Zach. The
John,
numbers.
I don't care what numbers you have. If you're telling me
percentages,
you're telling me that Brady's throwing a ball to win the Super Bowl, and whoever is going to catch it is going to have it highly contested. You're telling me here live that you would take Godwin over Evans in a contested.
Yes, Zach Blobner. Yes.
No, you would not.
Because here it's not just about size, although Godwin is plenty big too. Godwin has the better sense of timing, the more consistent sense of timing for attacking the ball in the air, and he has better hands than Mike Evans. Those are the 2 huge traits when you're talking about contested catches. Look at their contested catch rates. I'll pull them up for you. Godwin, there is literally a strong argument over the last 3 seasons of his career that Godwin is the best contested catch receiver in the league because he has the volume of opportunity and he has the percentages in his favor to him, how often he finishes. Now, there are different types of contested catches. There's jump balls, just high pointing them down the field. There's also contested catches at 10, 15 yards with a dude running through your back, trying to reach around you to make the catch, and you're finishing in those windows that, are like this. You can't even see the ball, and so he is kind of both worlds, right? Like you remember the game last year, the Falcons game. Evans goes down. I mean, Godwin just goes off. He's going high, pointing the ball over dudes. I mean, late in the game, he took a ball away from a linebacker and covers it near the end zone. Late in the game, he beat the safety in the corner for the jump ball. You remember the Green Bay game, middle of the field. He's going up, making a play on the ball for the huge gain right before the Leonard touchdown. Those are the kind of plays he brings to the table that I just think, to me, like that area of his game gives him another advantage.
I think that obviously there's a lot to back up that point. And again, you can make an argument for any of these guys that's successful. For me, my questions with Godwin aren't so much physical. They're not so much talent because we have seen it. And again, a big thing is seeing it be consistent. I think it's mental for me. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to go as far as to say he's like weak mentally or he's not focused in games because I don't think that that's the case. I do think he could be sharper though. And I think that's why he had that game where he had a bunch of drops. I don't know how last year's impact is going to help or hurt him. I mean, we see guys struggle in a season, John, and then the next season they come back and they're just never that guy again. We've seen it throughout the NFL forever happen with really good receivers before. So I hope that that's not the case. I wouldn't bet on that to be the case. But just like 2 years ago, we said, we got to see Godwin do it again. Well, now we got to see if he can bounce back. We expected him to do it again last year. He didn't do so because of a lot of the injuries and other factors. Well, okay, we expect him to bounce back this year. I do too. But again, I got to see it. And right now, the biggest question mark is if mentally he's going to be prepped and ready to roll in a way that he can accomplish the things that his talent and body it definitely can do.
Yeah, no, I mean, the consistency thing is an argument. If we're talking about who's had the better career, there's no question. Evans is the answer there. That's not even debatable. But, if we're talking about who I'd rather have going into 2021, we're obviously splitting hairs. Either of us are fooling each other if we say we're not splitting hairs. But I just feel like I would rather have the more well-rounded guy. But this is all outside of the context of the fact that Antonio Brown is on this team. Like, even regardless of where you consider him, that is ridiculous, Zach. Like
he's the hardest one to figure out, though. I mean, if you're ranking these guys, again, you can make an argument for any three, John. And I certainly am alongside you in watching AB this preseason and in training camp, more so the camp stuff, go wild. I mean, him and Brady have just been – it's looked like they've played together for 20 years, to be honest, the way that their chemistry works. You would think that they were teammates for longer than a half a season last year and one game in New England. You would think that they would have been best friends for life. And there's a lot to like about that, right? And obviously with AB, I think if we're going to talk about him, it's only fair to say, okay, we're going to remove the off the field stuff and we're going to assume he doesn't do anything that screws up his ability to stay on the field by doing something dumb off of it, because that's the only way to have this conversation in a fair way. But with that being said, when it comes to AB, I think, if we're giving guys gold stars for what they do better than the others, his footwork is unrivaled. I mean, he's a guy, toe tap Tony over there that just does it differently, but he's also the oldest, right? He's also a guy, I want to give Chris Godwin trouble for not doing it 2 years in a row. Well, AB, since it's been 2018 since he's had the last full season of really strong elite receiver work. So there's a lot, I think, that we can feel good about when it comes to AB. The other thing is he a guy that can bide his time, that we know once he has the ball in his hands. And I know you're going to go back to that argument of when he has it in the open field, he's as good as anybody. He can move around. He can do all that. Absolutely. But is he a guy who, he hasn't gotten a target and we're into the fourth quarter and Brady's seeing the other two guys, maybe somebody's hurt, maybe something happens. And he's like, I got to go AB 5 times in a row. Is AB going to be pouting? Is he going to be ready to roll in the fourth quarter? And even though that's in a way kind of like his personality, and I said we would keep that off the table, that's in game. That could affect him. So
yeah, no, I mean, it's a fair point. I will say this, when AB was in Pittsburgh, that was never a thing. Like he didn't pout in games. Nothing. It didn't matter. Like it just never it didn't happen. Maybe outside of that.
Not that we know about.
Right. But I never watched him on tape. It was like, wow, is he going 110%? Like he is every rep, all out, all the time, period. He's a unique individual. He's not like a all encompassing locker room on field poison.
They built it around him though. His target share was heavy in Pittsburgh.
Right. So we've never, and plus a lot's happened in his life since then. So I don't know what got, we could not get the same person. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's a fair point. The other thing is that he kind of knows the situation he's going into. He knows who Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are. Juju, maybe that sneaks up on you, but you're going to play with a couple of ballers and you got Gronk there. You're probably a little more prepared to go into the fourth quarter and not be like, wow, I only have one catch. You're probably like, all right, I could only have one catch going into the fourth quarter. It's just, but I'll say this too. if AB is AB. And like, I don't know, you're right. The last 2019 was the one game and he looked great. And then he didn't play, 20 was half the season. And then he came back, he was learning the offense. And then, I mean, when he got opportunities, like he knew some of the offense, he still looked absurd. I don't know, man. I mean, like if he's AB and there hasn't been any drop off, I'm sorry to all of these guys, but like AB, like when we last saw him on the field was better than Mike Evans or Chris Godwin have ever been. And so when we last saw him, like for real on the field in Pittsburgh, like for real,
that was years ago, though. I mean, we're talking about Godwin bouncing back after a rough season. AB, we're talking about bouncing back after longer than that.
But doesn't he look unreal? Like
he does so far.
Well, we got to see, we got to see
if he gets hit a few times, if he's able to hold up. Look, and I saw this earlier. I don't even know how I came across this. Do you know Dez Bryant is younger than AB? Like that just puts it into perspective. Like Antonio Brown is not this like younger dude or some dude that's like still at the end of his prime. Like he's on the other side and he's still very good. He's very effective. I even think you could say that he's still elite. And listen, in terms, I know you're about to go into fantasy football after our conversation. As far as value goes for these Bucs receivers, you're not going to get better value than AB later in drafts. Bro, I've circled him on pretty much every draft I've been in and will be in for fantasy because of the value of what he brings in the comparison to him and Evans and Godwin. That being said, there are some things I'm concerned about that after a few games, like I don't know. It's one thing to just bounce back after having some time off, only playing half a season. But at the age that he's at, like he's less likely for his body to hold up the way that the other two guys are just from age alone. So I think with AB, there's a lot of optimism, probably more than there's been with him since he's left Pittsburgh in any capacity. But with that being said, if you're comparing him to Evans and Godwin, I mean, I think your argument for Godwin is very applicable to AB, and I like Godwin on the field more than AB right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that your reservations about AB are fair, but I will say that most of your reservations are also like, we just don't know. And that's true. But what we do know is that when AB is on the field, buddy, like when he's AB, like there's nothing really that AB can't do on the field. Like I've never put any weakness or limitation on him, watching him for years and years and studying basically every game he's played in. Like contested catches, dude's unbelievable at him. Like finishes through contact like bigger receivers do all the time. Just knows how to use his body, knows how to shield, strength and concentration are unreal, constantly embarrass bigger corners to the point where teams they thought for a while that was the way, and just it wasn't. Like he can't put a bigger corner on him. It's like he shreds them all.
Oh, yeah, because he'll find a way to get open. I mean, bro, since he's gotten into the league, and again, not to go all the way back to his time in Pittsburgh, but you talk about Mike Evans being a better route runner than he gets credit for. Godwin's a very good route runner. In my life, at his peak, I've never seen a better route runner than AB in my life. Like the way he cuts on the dime and he just slices and dices, and he's been that way since he got into the league. So that wasn't something he learned. Like he was doing that at Central Michigan. We just didn't know it because who watches Chippewa football, Right. So, I mean, I love what AB brings as a player. I think even at his age, he still has a lot of gas left in the tank. But can he beat? Because he was hands down the best receiver in football for years. Yeah. I don't think he's on that level. The crazy thing is, John, even if he's dropped from that level, okay, so he's not the hands down best receiver in the league anymore. Even a level lower than that, it's still a top 10 receiver. So that's why we're able to have this conversation.
Obviously, we're talking with Zach Blobner here from 620 WDAE and getting his perspective and his opinions on a lot of these the Bucs wide receivers. We've had this debate many times. It is a fun debate because it doesn't really matter. All three of these guys are awesome. And we're going to have Josh Norris from Underdog Fantasy joining us in just a couple minutes. He's going to break down and talk a little bit about what fantasy projections look like for these guys this season. Yeah, the AB conversation never gets old because it could be this, obviously I'm glad he's in Tampa Bay. It's awesome. 100%. It makes for very fun storylines and stuff on the field. But I will say this, if AB were somewhere else as a true number one first option in an offense, I would be very curious to see how the season would go, because I think there could still be numbers that he would put up there. So gets into a lot of different angles of this, a lot of different discussions. Before I let you go, Zach, who leads the Bucs this year in receptions?
I'm going to go with Mike Evans again. I mean, he led them last year. I think, Godwin, AB, Scotty Miller are really going to split a lot of those slot throws from Brady and the underneath stuff. I think Mike is going to always be his go-to guy for first downs and for touchdowns. And not that he'll always be the guy he throws to, but he's going to be option one, read one on a lot of those plays.
So if Mike Evans leads the team in catches, he probably leads the team in yards, in your opinion, right? Where Godwin could lead the team in catches, but maybe not necessarily yards.
Yeah, I think that there's no way really around that. I do think Godwin, not AB, will be a lot closer in yards, even though I think he's going to have, a significant amount of less catches. I think, as you talked about, he does a lot more in the open field with them. So I wouldn't be surprised if, again, with the exception of those first down plays where you need it like 3rd and 6, whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if Godwin's the guy that inches him down the field, right? For the most part, from the 20 to the 20, Godwin is going to be one of their go-to guys, assuming we're not talking about the deep balls.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And so then Evans leads the team in touchdowns too, in your opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
100%.
All right, there you go. Mike Evans all the way. Catches, yards, touchdowns. We'll see what Josh Norris has to say from Underdog Fantasy next. Zach Blobner, man, thanks for joining us. This is a long time coming. This was fun. I'm glad you jumped in here and got the people all riled up with your takes. I'm excited about it. Now we'll see if Josh can calm him back down or if he sends things spinning out of control as well. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it. All right, we got Josh Norris in the house.
What's up, man?
Fantasy. Not too much, buddy. How are you?
Long time no chat. Hope things are good on your end.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking Bucs wide receivers and projections for the team this year. Obviously, out of all the teams that I know you look at and cover right now, they're probably on the top of the list for most challenging for a fantasy analyst.
I have so many questions to ask you, John, because
to ask me? Okay,
and this is what I like to do. When I come on these shows, I try to piece together things from a 32 team lens, but then you're so close to it and what they want to be heading into 2021. And so that can answer a lot of questions for me. So here we go. I mean, last year, it was a tale of two halves, like a post-bye new season for Tom Brady and this offense. I mean, before, it was almost 40 attempts per game, 275 yards, and 2.3 touchdowns per contest. Then afterwards, you drop by about 5 attempts per game, up over 60 yards, 3 touchdowns per game. And we know that, one, this is a really freaking good roster. They're able to stay intact with those 22 starters. So, how do you expect this offense to unfold? And I'm sure your audience hears it all the time, but I want to hear it with my ears. Because as we've seen, really the last 2 years of his career, if things aren't working out with the running game where they're moving the chains to his own liking, Tom is like, hey, I'm going to take this responsibility, throw out a high neutral pass rate, and move the chains myself. Is that still possible, even with all starters returning?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that it is still possible for them, and Bruce will obviously opt for that as well. As soon as things get frustrating for either of those guys, they're just ready to let it rip. And so it's saved them from having a pretty weak run game most of the time to be able to go heavy pass when they need to. But yeah, I mean, this is a team that's certainly built to win that way. Their line is better in pass protection than it is in the run game, I believe. Their scheme is better in the pass game than it is in the run game. Just obviously the talent they have at receiver and tight end, and now adding Giovanni Bernard to the mix as well. It certainly works that way. The question is really who's going to produce in what way in this offense.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I want to know what your thoughts are too, and feel free to fire anything my way as well. But I think some ways we're kind of overthinking it. Everybody's like, oh, AB and Tom have this amazing connection because they played a couple games and they played a game in New England together and it was good. And that's true. I'm not denying that they have a good connection. No question about it. But I don't think Brady attaches himself to any one person. I think he just throws the scheme. He throws what's open. And if the offense isn't built around any one person, and Tampa Bay certainly is not, I think that anybody could get the ball.
To your point, it's not often when Tom Brady can go into a season like last year, having the likes of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and sure, the latter missed some games, and then sprinkle in Antonio Brown for 8 games and 4 starts last season. I'm with you. I mean, I think what is bankable is another 1,000 yards for Mike Evans, because he started with 7 straight of those seasons in his career, which is absolute lunacy. That's something like us at large don't talk about as often. And even it didn't look like he was going to get it last year. And in those first 6 weeks, he was really carried by touchdowns, had some 1-score games, had some 2-score games. I'm excited to see what Chris Godwin can do, because just 84 targets last year, 65 yards, again, just 12 games played. if we get a healthy, 17 games from Chris Godwin, we saw that in just a role that has put up so much production with Tom Brady in the past. I think to your point, and by the way, both of those guys on Underdog are being selected like they are locked in legitimate starters for you each and every week, because Mike Evans is being drafted as the 16th overall wide receiver. Chris Godwin just a few spots later at wide receiver 18. Antonio Brown is the one that it can go in two different directions. And I know you guys were talking about this beforehand, but at wide receiver 34, that's where Hayden, my co-host, has him. I'm a little bit later than that just because I find it so, this defense is amazing. I think that they're going to be in control more often this season than they were last year of the pace and game scripts. So I just don't know if they have like the will or the want to have 3 1,000-yard wide receivers.
It's a good point, man. And it just makes me realize how much goes into your job. Like, it is incredible to me how many different things you have to think through in your job, especially when it comes to a roster like the Bucs. Some rosters, I'm sure it's easy to look at and, Devontae Adams is probably going to go off this year. Yeah. But like a roster like the Bucs, because you have to think about the defense and the fact that the NFC is kind of weaker as a whole. And so how many of these games will they be the NFC South? That's 6 of your games. Weaker. Are they going to be in control of most of those games? Yes. We don't want to count any chickens before the hatch, but that's what it seems like, right? That they're going to be kind of at a point where you're right. They might be trotting out 12 personnel, in the fourth quarter, and they might not use 3 wide receiver sets. And
dude, the defense can be even better this year. As you know, Vita Vea healthy for an entire year. You bring in Joe Tryon to be a pass rusher on the outside and take some of those snaps away from JPP. I mentioned all of that with all those wide receivers. The other part is I want nothing to do of where all the running backs are going. And maybe your audience is going to hate me for saying this, but I just don't think that there's really a ceiling for any of them. And if there is for one, let me know. But like Ronald Jones is going as running back 34. That's like a dead area where I don't want to take a lot of running backs. Leonard Fournette as running back 40. And to me, I won't put words in your mouth, but to me, he is just like a volume accumulator that's like a below adequate player. Sorry, playoff Lenny, but like that's just what it is. And then what we see in the passing game, at least what I saw last year, is every single time he was forced to throw the ball to Keyshawn Vaughn or Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette, he hated his life. Tom Brady did. And so that's why you bring in someone who truly seems like in those prime passing downs, that's his only role in Giovanni Bernard. And I guess, John, to the final point is love the wide receivers, don't like the running back. Guess what? I just want to draft a bunch of Tom Brady at quarterback 9 overall and just call it a day and have pieces in all of them,
Yeah. Because you've got a little bit of production where no matter who contributes. That's definitely the smart play. So I'm glad you brought that up. I did want to touch on Brady and, but I do want to come back to the running back conversation just for a minute, because
of course
I completely agree with you. And Bucs fans are probably, riled up in the mentions already. They don't like when I get after Leonard, but it just is what it is. Like, Leonard for most of the year, he's a healthy scratch going into that Minnesota game, and Ronald Jones got COVID and got the finger and all the injuries mounted up for him. And so it was Leonard's job. And, to his credit, he did do some things a little bit better in the playoffs, a run here and there that got on some highlight reels, and they were honestly way better than any of the runs I'd seen. I didn't really know he had that in him. And so, maybe you can give him 300 touches to find those 3 or 4 plays again. But are you trying to do that in this offense? Like, every time he touches the ball, you're giving the ball to the 10th most talented dude on the that actually plays. And that's just not that. Just at the simplest base form, like, that's just not good football, good snap allocation.
I think that's a great way of putting it, that this team is so good that if this is the weakest element of their offense is the running back spot. Now, I would argue that's one area that has been improved since last season. And that's Giovanni Bernard. We joke, and this is fitting that I'm going to do it on this show, but the winner of Best Ball Mania 2 on Underdog wins $1 million. That's more money than Giovanni Bernard's going to make this season. So if one of you out there can make more than Gio this year, if you use promo code Pewter down below, you get 25 free bucks straight out of Hayden's pocket. Just skip the guacamole, invest in Underdog instead. And again, you can make more money this year than Gio. But yeah, again, it just makes me want to have tentacles in all of it. And that is Tom Brady. And it's interesting. He was going around like the quarterback 10, quarterback 11. I think so many people are just confident and comfortable with him right now in this offense that he is after that top 5, which I won't name them, but it ranges from Patrick Mahomes to Dak Prescott. Then there's the Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, and now Aaron Rodgers tier. and Tom Brady's ahead of all those rookies and ahead of like the movable quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts as well. And I think that's totally fine, despite us in fantasy land loving, the rushing production from quarterbacks. Tom Brady is so bankable in this offense that I love that sweet spot of the era of the draft for him.
Especially because Arians, and he's going to throw the ball no matter what he says or how much running backs he talks up, or we want to be able to run the ball. Or how many times he comes out running the ball on every first down out of 12, 13 personnel, or, at the end of the game, he's going to be airing it out and winging it. And he's another one that's thrown, as I'm sure he with the lead before. Like, he doesn't necessarily back down that much. So that may help some guys eventually too. But with the running back group, I think is Giovanni Bernard 49? Is he ranked 49th for you?
I will pull it up. Yeah.
So he's not.
He is. He's running back 50 right now, but that's right around like other players of his type. Like J.D. McKissick is running back 49. David Johnson. And I mean, look, if you're going to invest in the passing game back on one team, I would much rather it be a team that's going to win games and put up points on the board in Giovanni Bernard versus the freaking Houston Texans at running back 51. Yeah, but he's right around that area of also types that we call running back insurance, of like, if their starter goes down, then they can be, big time top running back names like Alexander Madison and Darrington Evans and a few others, Rashad Penny, so on and so forth. So that's the area where Gio's going right now.
He's the one guy that I might say it's so
could
hard,
exceed
right?
his value.
I think he could. I think they see him, Josh, and they think, remember, there's half these dudes are from the Cardinals. They had David Johnson. Yeah. They know what that looks like, right? And Harold Goodwin today actually said it. I was planning on talking about this anyway, but I just saw the quotes 10 minutes before we went on air. And Harold Goodwin literally said, like, we get him in our – we think about some of the things David Johnson did for us in Arizona and the ways that we used him. And that's what's happened in practice. They've put him in the slot. Every red zone snap, he's on the field. He's playing in the slot. He's playing out wide. There's so many plays they've drawn up for him in that area of the field. Here's my thing. I think the frustration with Ronald Jones has bubbled through for 3 straight years. He is the most talented runner on the team. There's no question about it. There's no comparison between him and Leonard in my mind. But I think that Rojo messes up enough stuff, pass protection, knowing where to be in as a receiver and dropping the football, that like, I think there's this, eventually you get a little bit worn down with him. And I think that's why Leonard played late in the year, because even though Leonard wasn't great, he was just a little safer than Rojo. And I'm not even sure that's true, given the way they've played in training camp. Rojo's been kind of all around better. And Leonard has never been a good pass protector either. And then on the other side of it, Josh, you've got like one of the best receiving backs in the league and maybe the best pass protecting back in the league. And you have a head coach who loves to throw the football. Yeah. And so I just wonder if when push comes to shove, if Arians is going to be like, get these guys out of here and give me the guy who I know can play.
And at least we know he has that role. Like, that's what you are drafting him to do. And with the other two, with Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, it could be like Ronald Jones against the Panthers, who has a huge day, or Leonard Fournette in the playoffs, who then has a huge day. And you mentioning red zone work for Gio makes sense to me, because I remember back to James White territory and Rex Burkhead territory with him in New England, and like that. They use that as well. I'm also looking at like Gio's past, and it's long because, he's on his age, 30 season, but 59 targets, 43 targets, 48 targets, 60 targets. That there's something there. I know Underdog is half point PPR, but like if your listeners at home are playing full point PPR, I would even draft Gio ahead of his running back 50 ADP right now. And who knows, like, he's barely run the ball as of late, because I think you and I can both say that Joe Mixon is an unreal talent in terms of running the football. And like they had clearly defined roles up there as well. Yeah. He had 416 yards last year. In 2017, another time when he had over 100 carries, it was 458 yards. I mean, maybe there is an alternate universe where Giovanni Bernard might also be the best runner on the team as well.
You're not far off. I mean, listen, they were getting into the nitty gritty here, but I actually talked about this with Matt Waldman, who I know a mutual friend of both of ours, on his show the other day. And I was saying about Giovanni Bernard, he is kind of such a hit the gas and get upfield type of guy. And he sees it and he's just decisive. He's hardly ever behind the line of scrimmage very long. And with Leonard, it just takes longer for him to make every cut. So the Bucs have this duo run scheme, right, where you're reading the mic and you're trying to make probably one of 2 cuts. And how quickly you make that decision and how quickly you get to that decision and get upfield is a big part of the game. And so people sometimes think, a duo, a scheme with doubles, like we're going to get us a power back to smash through those creases. I think speed is in low center of gravity is way more important for that. Like you're talking about accelerating through tiny creases off double teams in a split second while you've got that guy out of position before he can recover. I think Leonard's just a bad fit in the scheme, to be honest with you, on top of his own limitations, where Rojo's a better fit in the scheme, but the other stuff takes him off the field. And Gio just mashes the gas and gets, and so it might not be great. And he's never going to break a bunch of tackles, but he'll never be Rojo as a runner. But I just wonder if they get worn down by the other guys. So the whole Bucs running back situation is definitely fascinating. You're probably right in that I don't want to touch any of these guys necessarily unless they were way down the league. Now, the great thing is with Underdog Fantasy, for those who don't know, the best ball leagues are incredible because there's no defense, there's no special teams, there's no kicker and anything like that. You're drafting quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. That's what you're drafting.
Rounds. You get to draft some of your favorites as well. And
exactly.
Best ball, if none of you have played it ever before, there's no waivers, there's no trades. Yeah. It's just the best part of fantasy football. It's just the draft. Mm-hmm. And your optimal lineup is set each and every week after all the scores are in. So like if you forgot to put Marquez Valdes-Scantling in your lineup, or it's like so difficult to predict when the Deshaun Jackson spiked week is coming based on coverages, based on defenses, if you draft those guys late, a KJ Hamler, and he goes off for 2 touchdowns against an awful defense and Teddy decides to throw deep that week, guess what? That 21-point week is on your roster. So it takes all the headaches away, and whoever has the best draft wins your league in the end.
And we've probably got 5. I think we're completing leagues 3, 4, and 5 right now. Are almost done. Their signups are all in. People just have to hit the link and finish signing up. So check your email for those Underdog Fantasy leagues. By the way, if you've emailed me and you're listening to the pod and you've told me you want to be in on those Underdog Fantasy leagues, I've sent you a link, I'm sure, and you've got an opportunity to jump in and join one of those leagues. So do that so you can get signed up. Use that promo code PEWTR, PEWTR, get the $25 in credit. The $50 league invites went out today. League, and so we're going to have signups for that. Everybody that I already sent that link to, you're all going to be in. If you are interested in doing another $50 buy-in league with Underdog Fantasy, again, you get $25 of credit when you sign up for that promo code PEWTR for this, PEWTER. So if you're interested in another $50 league like that, we filled one like in seconds. So if you're interested in jumping in one of those, email me, John, Jon at pewterreport.com. We'll fill up another one of those bad boys. You can take all Scott Reynolds' money. It'll be great. So just let me know. Email me, John, Jon at pewterreport.com.
I'll add something. If you all have like that 1 or 2 home leagues that you care most about with college buddies, office league, whatever it is, there's no better way to prepare for it. Skip those freaking mock drafts that you use and go and try it on Underdog, because what you're going to be able to do is like, see, okay, this roster construction that I take Dalvin Cook at the 102 is so different than when I double up on Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins at the 111. You just get to test all these different constructions and see where all the ADPs fall. It really is the best way to me to prepare for that one home league that you care most about. And there are leagues for like $3, $5, $10. There's all across the spectrum for sure.
Right. So let me ask you this before we let you go and get you out of here. If you're on the board and you need a wideout, let's say other spots in your roster are good, what are you doing? Are you taking? I think we know Antonio Brown is, even though we might think he's the most talented still of the 3, it's hard for them to say, oh, Mike Evans, you're going to have a lesser role this season. Chris Godwin, you're going to have a lesser role this season. That's probably not going to happen no matter how good AB is, because those guys will still be good. And so if you have the choice between Evans or Godwin, I see what Underdog's rankings are. I think Godwin or Edmonds is 2 spots ahead of Godwin. Do you feel confident smash and draft on Mike Evans and leaving Chris Godwin on the board? Or are you, I don't know, Godwin catches per game.
I know.
The slot receiver to Bruce Arians offense.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And we talked about the games missed by Chris Godwin. It wasn't a clean season for Mike Evans either. I mean, he dealt with injuries at the start of the year. Like both of these pass catchers dealt with adversity.
Yep. Played in a couple games hurt. First couple weeks of the season, he was hurt. Then they got hurt in the week 17 game against Atlanta where Godwin and AB went off.
And so he was still hitting value based on touchdowns alone. I think there were some games that was one catch for 2 yards and a score, and that got home. I truly believe that we might look back in 4 or 5 years, maybe 6, 7, and think Mike Evans is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL during this era. This decade, just that sustained excellence is absolutely mad. Of 7 straight seasons of 1,000 yards, and that's tough for me to pass. Again, it's not even like you're spending a top 15 wide receiver pick on him, a top 10 wide receiver pick on him. Like a couple names going ahead of him are Robert Woods, are Tyler Lockett, are Amari Cooper. I mean, Amari Cooper and Tyler Lockett, love them as players, but they can give you considerable headaches week in and week out. Sure. And so just the consistency that Mike Evans brings, and hopefully we get a clean season out of him, I think he'd be the one I'm going to select. Just because even when if you're not getting yardage in a game, you're probably getting a touchdown. Like he's not dealing you up a blank slate very often for sure. Yeah, it's a good way to look at it for sure. There is this temptation with Godwin because last 3 years, he's really been an integral part of the offense. Obviously last year, catches per game, I believe he was on top. He played he listed at 12, but two of those games he went out of early. So, I mean, he probably wasn't even at actual 12 times 4 number of quarters played, in terms of the amount of time he spent on the field last season. That's 48. Yeah. So, I think that thank you. Hey, listen, we sports media, man. Like, I'm not trying to work harder than I have to here, Josh. But so I think with Godwin, it's that he's going to be on the field all the time. When you go with one wide receiver, he's going to be the guy on the field, so there's that productivity. You're going to get lots of snaps with him, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, as good as Godwin is in the red zone, you're talking about maybe one of the few guys that's better. 7 touchdowns for Godwin last 3 years, and Evans has still managed to top that. He broke his own franchise record twice now. So, I mean, it's he's one of those players that you definitely take to the bank. Real quick, tight end situation for the Bucs. What do you make of it? Do you have any confidence left in OJ Howard? I know Bucs fans don't. I mean, so many tight ends, this from tracking it through the draft too, hit their stride on their second team or their second contract. I kind of feel like that's where we're headed with the OJ Howard, Evan Ingram, whoever else, and David Njoku draft class. Yeah. I guess my concern, the one obviously who's being drafted the highest right now is Rob Gronkowski at tight end 18. I know he feels a lot better, but part of me thinks that, this is a narrative I'm buying into, but look, it would be a travesty if the Bucs don't make the playoffs. And the difference that he made, like in those critical and crucial situations, do you really want to risk that through the entire season? Or do you just want to save him for key moments, key games, especially towards the end of the year when this team can hopefully repeat as Super Bowl champions? And so tight end 18, obviously the talent outweighs that concern, but he's only 29. Is that correct? Like he's still in his 20s? I wish that was the case with me. Who are you talking about? Gronk. Oh, Gronk. I don't think he's 29 years old. Is he past his 30s? Yeah, he's past his 30s. I think he's 33, I believe. Is he really? Maybe 32. Yeah, he's 32. No, you're right. 32. I'm way off on that. Anyways, with Gronk, tell me if I'm wrong, and that's a stupid narrative that I don't think he's going to be a key piece each and every week, and that they might hold him really for a playoff run. They might. Here's the thing that makes Gronk the whole thing tough with Gronk is that he is light years beyond their next best blocker. For the life of me, I don't know why. Again, duo run scheme, love to go max protect, love to keep their tight end in to protect. Why don't the Bucs have more tight ends that can block? They go into every year. I was get Mercedes Lewis last year. Get him as your third tight end. Get him as your fourth tight end. He's old. He wants to be in a contender. He blocks like crazy. And then they just we're running back with OJ Howard and Cam Brate and Tanner Hudson and Cody Matt. None of those guys can block at all. So he's really the only one. So that makes it hard. OJ tries and coming out, there was a thought that he could block, but last year was getting a little better than the Achilles. And then this year it's been terrible in camp and preseason. He hasn't been able to block anyone. So the short answer to your question, Josh, is that if OJ Howard is ready to ball, then yes, I think that they'll split Gronk. I don't think they ever wanted him to play as much as he played last year. Yeah. But he held up great and actually got better as the year went on and played really, obviously the Super Bowl was a good game for him. And so he's been kind of good across the board when they've needed him. You obviously do more than look at the stats. So I'm sure you saw the tape last year and you saw how many times Rob Gronkowski actually got open last year and was missed at times last year. And that production could have been a lot higher. I would be all in a Gronk at tight end 18, except for the fact that it's been a really quiet camp for Gronk. I don't know whether that means anything because he's 32 and he gets veteran days off all the time. And, he looks like he's in great shape for what it's worth. And he's still open all the time. But he's dropped some balls and maybe he's not a practice guy. I don't really know. We'll see. He hasn't, obviously preseason, they barely played. So Saturday will tell us something. All your listeners and viewers know this, that every year we think we can predict the late round tight end that is going to hit. Like last year, we all thought it was going to be Chris Herndon, and that just freaking blew up in our faces.
Blew up, yeah.
And
it was Robert Tonyan.
Yeah. I mean, it's so difficult to predict.
Yeah.
And like this year, a lot of people, it's Anthony Ferkser, who's going as like tight end 23. Hunter Henry at tight end 21, Jared Cook at tight end 20, Adam Troutman at tight end 17. So maybe it is the wily vet who arguably is the best tight end of all time, and Rob Gronkowski, and we shouldn't overlook him.
And the other thing with Gronk that you're getting, right? You're getting red zone snaps in production. Like he will get concentrated targets in the red zone like he did last year. And honestly, they probably missed him 2 or 3 times for wide open Denver. I'm thinking he was wide open for touchdown. Carolina, wide open for touchdown, missed him. So there's going to be lots of opportunities for him in the red area, which makes him like kind of in my mind, like a good quiet, especially if he's in that 18 range. Like, all right, like if you're going to wait out the tight end group, like then maybe that's a guy that you try to play, because red zone, he and Brady, that's one area where I'm not like, I know there's going to be 5 or 6 touchdowns at least on the board, maybe 8 if he gets, the volume goes in the red zone. It's a max. But here's the other thing that's interesting about the Bucs that I know you think about this stuff a lot, Josh, but that a lot of people might not know if they don't cover the team, is that I have never been around a team that spends as much practice time in the red zone as Tampa Bay. Like, they're just there all the time. They run their routes on air in the red zone. Yeah. All their timing stuff is in the red zone. Like they do several red zone periods from the 20 in, from the 15 in, from the 10 in. They run through their plays. They're 5 in from the 2. Like they run everything in the red zone, every practice, multiple times of practice. I mean, I've been around some other teams, seen other practice periods for other teams. I covered the Steelers for years, so I know, like, watching them. I mean, there was like 1 7 shots period in the red zone, and that was like it for most of practice. The Bucs just spent a ton of time there, and I think it's a reason why the touchdown production is pretty good there.
It is. They're above average. Like they were 11th in red zone TD rate last season, so there's still some area to grow. Yeah, and staying in the division, I think that is going to be a huge difference for the Atlanta Falcons. Not saying they're going to be a good team, but I think they can be a better offense, because you seriously go from a team that was 26th in red zone rate last year to Arthur Smith, who is like a magician in that area. In the last 2 years, he's been number 1 and number 2 in red zone touchdown rate. Now it's different. There's no Derrick Henry. Offensive line has changed. Ryan Tannehill versus Matt Ryan in that area. But still, you have Mike Davis, who can break tackles at a really high rate. You have Kyle Pitts, who can be a monster in the red zone area. Calvin Ridley is awesome there too. And Matt Ryan has, won the MVP and been super productive in the past. So those 4-point plays, like seriously scoring a touchdown instead of kicking a field goal, as much as putting points up on the board is cool and good, that can be a huge difference in game winning scenarios. So yeah, I totally understand that. And I think that's super smart, where a team like, again, saying the division, the Panthers were abysmal at it last year. I think it really dictated a lot of their moves this offseason in signing Dane Arnold and drafting a Terrace Marshall as well.
Yeah, so in the division, could come up clutch. Good points for sure. He is Josh Norris, ladies and gentlemen. Follow him on Twitter at Josh Norris. Make sure you are checking out UnderdogFantasy.com. As Josh mentioned, not only do we have our awesome leagues that we're doing at PewterReport.com that I mentioned before you can email me about, but also you got to check out the tournaments on UnderdogFantasy.com. Some of these tournaments are amazing, like $5 entry to win in the $1 million Puppy League, Puppy 3, excuse me. And then the Best Ball Mania 2, you're putting in $25, which again, you're getting with that promo code Pewter, PEWTER, and you can win $1 million. You can win more than Giovanni Bernard's going to make this season. So make sure you jump in. Best Ball Mania 2, the Puppy 3, Big Dog is another league they got going there for a $250 entry. Lots of opportunities to win money with Underdog Fantasy. Lots of opportunities to jump in that league. And you're going to want to make sure you've started an account there, because it only takes a couple seconds.
Yep.
And one of the best parts about it is in the season, there's going to be opportunities for you to do stuff too. It's not just before the season, but they're going to have prop bets out the wazoo, and we're going to be talking about them.
By the way, they're still going on right now with preseason games. We got preseason pick'em going on. So if you want a little sweat with some Tampa Bay preseason action,
get on there.
Go try it out over there. Go try it out over there.
I only absolutely crazy people put money on the line for preseason games, but there are people like that in this chat right now. Yes, there you go, Josh. And they're going to put money on stuff going down Saturday, especially with the Bucs starters probably playing that first half. So get in there, check out those pick'ems that are going down as related to the Bucs for Saturday night and other football teams or other NFL teams as well this weekend. Josh, man, thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate you giving the time and the insight. This was a lot of fun.
Talk to you soon. See you, buddy.
Absolutely. Yep. Take care of yourself. There goes Josh Norris, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate him jumping onto the show and running us through some of his fantasy thoughts on the Bucs. Lots of good insight from him. He is one of the most detailed, hardest workers in the entire fantasy football industry. So we're blessed to be able to have him on the show and be a part of what we're doing. We're very excited because if you haven't heard about it yet, the Pewter Report Game Day Show is happening. So make sure you check us out. The Game Day Show between the Bucs and the Texans is going to be going live Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be right here on Pewter Report podcast stream. If you don't subscribe to the Pewter Report podcast, go hit the subscribe button on Pewter Report TV on YouTube. We're well up over 5,000 now. We're gearing our way toward 10,000 subscribers. Y'all are awesome. You're spreading the word like crazy, and Bucs season is around the corner. So hit that subscribe button. See when we go live by hitting the bell for the notifications. You'll get notified when we go live. Your choice still, whether to jump in or not, but at least you know you won't miss anything when we go live. It's a lot of fun. Pewter Game Day, though, Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, we are going to have a live in-game stream going here. It's going to be on pewterreport.com. So watch it live over there at pewterreport.com. And we're going to have commentary from myself on the game as it's happening. So if you followed along with my tweets in the past before, less on Twitter, more on the show is going to be my commentary, my thoughts as the game's going on, things I think they need to do better, things that might be concerns moving forward in the game, things of that nature. Other Pewter reporters will jump in as well. We'll have special guests on from time to time. Already confirmed with a couple names I know you're going to be very excited to see be a part of the show. It's going to be injury updates and expert analysis. You're going to have X's and O's. You're going to have analytics talk. We're going to figure this thing out as we go. This is new for us too, and there'll be some bumps in the road. And if we'll need your all grace while we work through that, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And then the Pewter Report post game podcast is going to be about an hour after the game ends. We'll have that too once we get through coaches availability and players availability and all that. So make sure that you are kind of following along with everything going on at pewterreport.com for those Pewter game days, because it's going to be a blast. We're going to have so much fun with those shows, and I'm very, very excited to see what y'all have to say about them as we work our way through those. So the first one is 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday as the Bucs take on the Texans. Very excited to get to that for y'all. That'll be the next time you see us here on the podcast stream. That will be live streamed on pewterreport.com. And if you're worried about how's the timing going to work with Saturday? Am I going to be ahead of you, or am I going to be ruining plays for you? I really don't think that will be the case, because I'll be watching on YouTube TV, and that's usually a little bit behind cable TV or at the same time as other online TV services. So we'll see how it works, and we'll kind of adapt from. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, I think. So make sure you join us Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be live on the show. Until then, thanks so much for listening to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.